This is where we need to stay in tune to what's going on. School is going to start having problems. Grades are going to start slipping because all we're going to want to start doing is getting that fixed. Even on the Adderall, grades will probably stay up there, but we're going to start losing sleep. When we start losing sleep, we're going to crash, and when we crash, we end up sleeping all day and not reporting to school. Okay? Sports, especially with the depressants, we're not going to have time for sports. We're going to want to be getting our fix. Family, we're not going to have time for family unless they're doing our fix with us or we're getting it from them. Changes in social groups, we're going to start hanging around people that are into what we're into or at least can get us what we want. Okay? This is going to change drastically. We're going to start wearing soiled clothes. We're not going to start taking care of ourselves. We're going to start losing weight. We're not going to look healthy. Start getting acne really bad if we've never had it before. And I skip right into heroin. And this next slide probably won't work, and I apologize for that. It's just not supported. Because the correlation between prescription medication abuse, generally, when we talk about it, is the opiates, or the opioids, is really in partnership with the heroin. It's not going to work. What I had there was a video that I found along the way in investigations of a female subject who was what we call in the business on the nod. It's a pretty intense video. I thought it was something important for you folks to see, because if you ever see your kid on the nod, which is basically them zoning out, and they'll be looking like they're trying to stay awake. If you ever seen like a 6-month-old force themselves to stay awake and they're doing the head bob, that's exactly what they're doing. That should be alarming. A little background on heroin. In 1874, during the Civil War, morphine was developed or administered and developed to cure pain issues on the battlefield, highly addictive. So we had to find a way to start weaning our soldiers off morphine. So German scientists came up with a solution. Invented heroin from the opioid plant. Didn't realize it was much more addictive than morphine, and it was used as a step down from morphine. So methods of ingestion are injection, snorting, and smoking, and oral. The dependency is physically extreme. People who are addicted to heroin or opioids cannot live and breathe without them. If they do, they go into extreme withdrawals. It affects their body physically. I've seen subjects on withdrawal from heroin. It's not a pretty sight. It's psychologically addictive. The effects of heroin are euphoria, drowsiness, watery eyes, runny nose, constipation, and decreased sensitivity to pain. The problem with all the above is it affects your respiratory system. Your heart slows, your breathing slows. And ultimately what happens is your heart rate and your breathing slow to such a point that it stops working. And what happens is you drown when you overdose and die on opiates or heroin. It's called an out-of-water drowning experience. You literally drown on your own body fluids. The water in your system, the fluid in your lungs, all that, you drown. You get what's called a pulmonary edema. We typically pick this up in the death investigation through what's called a foam cone, which is only present in 2 types of death: overdose from opiates or drowning. No cases yet for drowning have reported a foam cone because it washes away. Okay? So why has there been an upswing? Well, since the 60s and 70s, the ability to snort it because of the purity. We don't have problems with HIV. You get a 2 to 4 hour high at 10 to 20 bucks a crack. It's not an aggressive high. The ability to smoke it and the immediate effects. It doesn't take a while to set on like smoking marijuana. Okay? So, wow. Long-term effects in the addiction, compulsive drug seeking, it's physically dependent, a higher dosage to obtain the same effect. What that means is you'll never get, it's been reported from people who live through their addiction, through recovery, that they can never get that same high from the first time they use the drug. They can never get it, so they spend the entire time of the rest of their use trying to get back to that first high. You get collapsed veins, infection of the heart, arthritis, bacteria infections. You get drowsy, your breathing slows, your brain function ceases and equals death. Withdrawal, cold turkey. It's not a good sight. Happens within 8 to 12 hours of the last dose. It peaks within 24 to 48 hours. Flu-like symptoms, constant vomiting, everything hurts, they can't sleep, they shiver, shake. It's pretty horrible. I actually think Hollywood does a pretty good representation of what going cold turkey looks like in some of the newer movies. Snorting they just snort it, adds problems because too much is wasted, and they get really bad sinus infections from snorting heroin. Smoking, what they do is they put it on a piece of foil or bottle cap, stir it around with a little liquid, heat it up. They capture the smoke through a straw, inhale it that way. This method isn't really used much, but it is out there. Where most people go when you hit rock bottom is you go to injection. Once you hit the lowest bidder, the bottom of using heroin, you're at injecting. You mix it with water, you heat it up, you drop a cotton ball into the water, you stick your needle in the cotton ball, and you suck out the mixed burned liquid to take out the impurities, because you don't want to inject that into your veins. Find your favorite vein, and believe it or not, most users have a favorite vein. And they shoot it into their veins. There are some other methods, but you see with the cigarette filter, it's called pounding the laundry. They do cool their syringe sometimes, depends on how bad they need their fix. They'll usually, or sometimes they'll shoot a heater right inside. They let a little bit of the blood into the syringe just to make sure they have a good vein. I've had conversations with some heroin users along my way. I used to be trained to administer IVs when I was in the service, and I was pretty good. I used to do a lot of first sticks, maybe 2 or 3. These heroin users can usually hit a vein first try, every try, no problem, because they spend most of their time trying to hit bad veins, collapsed veins, that they could be some wonderful paramedics or nurses or doctors with the ability they have to hit a vein in the human body. Skin popping is interesting. Not a lot of heroin users will do this because it wastes a lot of the heroin. What they'll do is they'll inject the heroin into their fat cells. A lot of times they'll do this when they know they got to go sit in jail for a while if they're on probation, or they got to go see their PO or to a family event, and they don't want to have to sneak away every so often to get their fix. So they mix it the same way into a syringe. They'll hit some fat in their body, in their buttocks, abdomen. They'll stick the needle in there. They'll insert the heroin into the fat cells, and it'll dissipate and soak in over time. Bottom of the slide said fear to mainline. That is another way that people will do it if they're afraid to actually hit a vein, if they're afraid of needles. Some of the typical tools of the trade with heroin users: the hypodermic needles, the cotton balls, the purified water. Get these with nebulizers, alcohol pads, tourniquet, these candle cookers. You start seeing these show up in your trash can or in your kids' room or in their cars, in their backpacks. We need to be alarmed, because this is the lowest bidder. And this is an epidemic everywhere, throughout the whole United States. The state of Wisconsin is not immune to it. The village of DeForest isn't immune to it. It is getting better in the village of DeForest. 2012, we had one overdose death. And I can't think of any, maybe one overdose where the subject didn't die from heroin. I don't know why. What I would tell you is my suspicion is if you're a severe user, a daily user, you're going to want to get closer to that source. Primarily what we found through investigations, those sources are usually in the higher populated areas like the city of Madison. Why not move closer to your source so you don't have to drive 1,000 miles a week, because these people are doing it 10 to 12 times a day. Just move closer to the source. Track marks. You start seeing your kids looking up like they were fighting with a dog, but you don't have a dog, you might want to start looking into it. Basically what these are, they're burnt veins. Some of them are little infections from using the same needle over and over again. The black marks are the actual decaying veins inside the arm from injecting that poison into it. Types of heroin, I threw this in here because there really is no one way, shape, or form to say this is what heroin looks like, because heroin looks like everything. It comes from all over the region. There's Mexican heroin, Southwest heroin, or Southwest Asia, Southeast Asia, South America, black tar. It's all different colors, shapes, and sizes. Some heroin there, some heroin there, some heroin there. So, a lot of the questions we get are, what's the cost? You could throw a stone in any direction from the interstate and expect to pay $10 to $20 for a dime bag of heroin, a half gram or a gram. And I can tell you I've done this professionally for drug investigations. It is that quick. We work informants, we investigate at the Village of DeForest Police Department, investigate drug overdose deaths intensely and seriously, and we take it usually to the end if we can, and it is extremely easy to purchase heroin. It amazes me how easy it is. Most users will pool their money together to what we call in the business a middler. They throw their 10 to 20 bucks in a pot. The middler has a source. They go to the source, they get that much more heroin, and they divide it out amongst themselves. Most users are unemployed and have to commit crimes to support their daily habit. So does rehab work? Most certainly, if the addict wants to. And that goes with any rehabilitation. Most times they'll do it to appease mom or dad, a significant other, a friend, another family member. I realize I got a problem. I need to go to rehab. They'll go, they'll spend 4 or 5 days there, maybe a week. And they'll come out the back door. Go right back into the light. Most end up using heroin again within days of getting out of rehab. It's still light. So what to look for with the kids? The good news is with heroin, at least right now, we're not really seeing this with our DeForest resident kids, the teenagers. What we're seeing with them is the prescription abuse. And when they can't afford the prescriptions to get them on the street or to get them from families, by that time they're out of high school and they're moving on down to heroin. Bottom of the line is when they start buying heroin. Definitely no time for sports, for family. A heroin user's whole day is consumed on how they are going to get their next fix. That is how they spend their day. That is what they do during their day. Every waking moment is spent on trying to figure out how to get money to get their next fix, to get their next high. Because none of them want to become dope sick. It is so horrible and wretched to them to become dope sick. They want to continue to get their fix. 95% of the heroin users that I've dealt with in my job have the same story. 95% of them. I don't want to be a heroin user. I do not want to be addicted to heroin, but there's nothing I can do. I want to get off this, but there's nothing I can do. A common discussion between me and a heroin user is the demon has control of you. It's time to take control of your life. Of the 100% of heroin users that I deal with, that I talk to, half of them started on heroin because they were addicted to prescription medication through various ways, an injury in high school sports, and injuries in work, given prescription from other people, and the other half, unfortunately, were injected by a friend. Hey, try this. You're gonna love it. New friends, new problems, more than ever with heroin. Like I said, 110% of a heroin user's day is spent on trying to figure out how to get their next fix. Heroin users will flock to heroin users. Why? Because when their source dries up, my buddy's source is going to be there. And if my buddy's source is not there, we're going to find another buddy whose source is going to be there. And keep on going on down the line. Because sources get nicked off every day by law enforcement. Somebody steps up and takes over for them. It's that repetitive cycle. Well, how do they get their money? I've seen everything from committing strong-arm robberies at gas stations, hotels, shopping markets, to committing burglaries daily. I've dealt with heroin abusers who've committed 5 to 6 burglaries in one day before we catch up with them on the 7th. And you're thinking, that's not so bad, but what if I told you of those 5 to 6 burglaries or 7 burglaries they committed before we caught them on that day, 6 of them were family members. Moms, dads, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters. Easy targets, easy pickings. I've had heroin abusers writing checks on dead grandma's account, on dead mom's account, mom who's been passed away for 10 years, writing checks on an account that's not even there. Ran dad hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt so he could get his fix. Heroin users age overnight. The problem with doing a presentation like this is the pictures that I'd love to show you, I can't because it's probably somebody you know or know of, unfortunately. You literally can take a picture of someone who used heroin or never used heroin, and 6 months down the line, when they got really deep into heroin and you wouldn't even recognize them. They've aged almost 50 years. They get acne so bad, they sweat, they don't bathe, their clothes are rat and tattered. They don't care what they look like, they don't care what they smell like, they only care about getting their next fix. That's what they spend their time doing.